Welcome to Every Step Podcast. I'm Krystyna Weston.
And I'm Judith Beck.
Every Step is the podcast where career and life meet.
Good morning, Krystyna. How are you?
Hey, Judith, I've missed you.
I know. I needed my dose of Krystyna. I felt like we were supposed to have, now what's happened, just so everybody knows, we were going to have a pop-in guest today, and they had to back out at the last minute because they're in a very senior role in a corporate environment. Now, in corporate environments, to be on a podcast or to speak freely, you have to get permission from your PR department, and they didn't realize they needed to do that. That's never concerned us in the past, because most of the speakers that we've had on have been entrepreneurs or
self-employed
or people like us who don't care. But in a corporate environment, they do monitor what you say, and they are concerned about what you say and where you go. So
yeah,
that's
rightly so, because
rightly
you're
so.
representing the corporate brand. Yeah.
Yep. So hopefully those permissions will happen and we can have that person at another time. But I could have gone down the track, as you could have as well, and we could have gotten, a dozen more speakers to pop in. But I thought, no, I want to speak to Krystyna today.
Yeah, I think it's time for just a you and me little cozy chat where everyone can tune in.
And I'll tell you, the big reason is because, one, I was listening to Elizabeth's Best podcast, The Ghost of Boyfriends Past, because I knew you were on it.
Yeah.
And, I got to listen to it, and it was so good. And you were telling, you were just opening up your life about being, having being married 3 times and saved the best for last. And
exactly.
And I've had my practice marriage too, as well. So, I was married for 17 years and then got divorced and then remarried. But what triggered it for me was like, aha, I've been hearing continually, and it does do my head in, because of all these women who are in their probably 40s, because usually your first divorce will start at your late 30s. That's usually when you kind of go, do I really want to be with this person the rest of my life? That's kind of, you start thinking about that and making those life decisions. But I've been seeing all these things where these women are getting scammed left, right, and center by people who aren't real, and they're going on the dating apps. And
even by people who are real, let alone by people who aren't real.
Well, exactly. And you mentioned that that series, which we both love, Fake.
Yeah, Fake.
Like, that's
with
a real true story on Netflix, and it just pointed out the importance of your due diligence when you are going on these sites. And it brought me back to just how we did due diligence when I was doing executive search with references and checking people out, and do they have it? And there was this other story on 60 Minutes, I think it was, where the scammers now can replicate through AI a person. So you might meet somebody on a dating site, and then you go, okay, let's have a Zoom. And then you're actually talking to in real time, but they've put someone else's face.
Yeah.
And how are you going to know? And the triggers, and I think some of those things, like I seriously, if I had to date today, I'd probably be single.
Oh, I think it would be awful to be in that scene. And I think it's very quick. I've been chatting about the Fake series with a few people, men and women, and it's really easy for people to get judgmental and kind of go, oh, she was so dumb. How did she not see the signs? And this is the misconception, is these things happen to smart, intelligent, competent, capable women. It's not something that happens to idiots. And when you so want something, you kind of make like the actress or like the character in Fake did. It's like, oh, look, I've got to work on my trust issue. He's a really good guy. And you don't listen to your inner warning system. But it happens to smart, competent, successful women, because at the end of the day, we all just want to be loved and we want to belong and we want to be with our right person, whoever that right person is for us.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is like, so, I've been with my husband for 24 years now. So back then, when I had gotten divorced, I was single for about a year and I didn't go on dating sites. It really wasn't that big of a thing back then as it is now. But I had certain rules that I sort of held to. I was kind of like, okay, this is all new and foreign to me. So what am I going to do? I'm not going to focus on finding someone. I'm going to focus on being active.
Yep,
And
exploring. Yep.
explore. So basically, my rules were I don't care if I'm the third wheel, and I don't care if I'm the fifth wheel. So you have your friends, and if they invite you over for dinner, a lot of people will go, oh, I don't want to go over because it's all couples. Well, that's baloney. Be the wheel. Be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
wheel or the fifth wheel, because I can guarantee you're going to meet your person probably through your friend and their friends and their extended friend group. They're the ones that a lot of times will. I mean, I literally was. I literally in that year, and I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but at the time it did feel like a long time. But I literally was like, I'm sick of this whole dating thing because people do try to fix you up with people, and they all, like they try to fix you up with people out of the goodness of their heart, or they'd invite you over to dinner, and then there'd be someone single there.
They'd
And if
set you up.
And mine, I remember I was single for the 2000. Remember that? Nobody wanted to be single when it turned 2000. And I was invited over to a friend's big, huge party as the single person. And who they thought they were going to pair me with was just not going to happen.
I think it's really hard these days because there's so many more rules around it. You can't meet people at it used to be that you met people at work or through work. And now that's kind of has got all sorts of complications. And we've had podcasts and we've talked about this issue in the past. So work is a no, like in your office is a no-go zone. Clients, look, maybe, but there's potential consequences there as well, right? So work has become a challenge. And then if you're busy working and you don't have time to go out, it's actually hard to meet people, especially when everybody's coupled up. So you've kind of left with the internet, but the internet is really challenged. It's a really difficult place to navigate. So there aren't that, I hear what you're saying in terms of, go out and I mean, absolutely do all of that. And I did all of that. I mean, I'm now going back, more than a decade or even longer when all of this was happening. But it's just that much more challenging these days, I think.
It is, but you're not going to meet anybody if you don't go anywhere.
Oh God, that's so true. Yeah.
And there's two things that I think um that you need to consider. There's one, obviously, if you are the type of, and I know lots of people who have met their partner online, so there is a success rate there, but you have to be very diligent in that. And one of the red flags that we've seen everywhere in all these stories that come out is people, your friends will start asking questions and they'll start at pointing things out. You really need to listen to your friends because they
Yeah.
are your fresh eyes, and they'll start saying things like, well, it's kind of weird that you haven't met face to face yet.
Yeah. Or don't you think
While
it's strange that he doesn't have many friends?
bingo. And let me tell you, if someone tells you they love you before they've even met you, you gotta wonder, you
But
know,
love,
you
love bombing's a thing. And if
love
you think,
bombing.
but this is the thing when you're vulnerable, when you've been single for a long time and you think you've met your man and you're caught up in this or person, doesn't matter what gender they are,
Yeah.
what they identify with. Um, but when you've met your person, it's so easy to kind of, especially if you're caught up in this fairy tale of love at first sight and everything's going to be perfect. And you've got all your hormones, all over the place. So being love bombed is kind of almost like the perfect dream, right? So it's so
Ah,
easy to get caught up in that.
but love bomb to me is I'm picking you up and taking you to a nice restaurant. I'm, I'm going to like half these people who are love bomb online are getting nothing,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they turn
Real
around,
world, baby. Real world action.
real world. And then they're all saying to them, if someone asks you for money that you've never met, that's the biggest red flag ever. And all you need to do is say, oh, look, it's just not possible. The first thing you should do is say you have no money and
Yeah.
then see if they stick around. Like, I don't have any,
Ah,
say,
yeah.
I don't have any money. You know,
Reminds me of a story actually. My mum's one of my mum's good friends was dating this man, and this was a number of years ago, and she would have been in her 60s then, easily in her 60s. And she met this man and he was amazing. And he told her he had no money. And they dated and she fell in love with him. And it turned out that he was freaking wealthy as.
so he didn't want somebody to like him just because he had a lot of money. That's a smart move. And so if you're don't give out everything. And a lot of, and what's sad, there was a story the other day, and this woman, she lost her whole superannuation,
Mm,
and she didn't have a lot of money. That was just what she was going to have for the rest of her life, which still wasn't a lot. And she lost the whole thing because of all these promises. And no, 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 that's where friends need to really keep an eye out and step in and make sure people aren't lonely when they're by themselves. Like, make sure they do get out. If they have broken up or just gotten divorced, that, my friends really came to
yeah.
my side. I mean, like I said, I was going out all the time with friends as the third wheel or the fifth wheel. I was working, running businesses, but I had this rule: Friday, I don't care if I go out because I'm tired from the week. Saturday, I'm going somewhere.
Yeah.
Saturday, I am going somewhere, even if I have to go by myself. I'm going to a movie, I'm going out, I'm going to people's. And you have to also be the person that calls people. You can't expect for them just to call you. And
That's so true. You've got to be the initiator. It's a reciprocal thing here. It's not all one-sided.
and also people think I can't talk to the group that my ex-husband introduced. So in other words, there's a split of friends. And I never had that. Because the
Yeah.
reality is the friends were both of ours.
I
And
had I had that happen. I lost a whole group of
you
friends.
lose a whole group of friends. So hopefully your friends don't think that way. And what I did is when I also had an amicable breakup too. So my ex-husband and I were always friends and remained friends. But when I met my current husband, the first time that he met all my friends, my ex-husband was there. So
Yeah.
he literally walked into a restaurant of about 25 people or at a table, the last one coming in. I mean, and I thought to myself, and they did too. They went, man, he's brave. That's courage. And then remember having a party and people said, well, how can you invite so and so because because they're exes? And I go, no, you know what? My rule of thumb is I invite everybody. They choose who comes and who doesn't. I'm not inviting her and not inviting him just because they used to be married. They're both my friends. I'm inviting everybody. And if they don't want to come and be around each other, well,
That's
that's so be
that's
it.
on them. But it does happen. I was 30 when I split from my daughter's father, and and we had an amicable separation, but he repartnered really quickly, and I was in my early 30s. I was single, and I just stopped getting the invitations, and because he'd coupled up straight away, he continued to get invitations to the couple environments. And I don't know, maybe I was a threat. I don't know. Single woman. I don't know, but the invitation stopped.
Yeah, I was 40, so I probably wasn't a threat. I mean, and you know what, it is really hard to get out into that dating thing when you are in your 40s, when you get past that sort of, because your friend group also diminishes as well. You got
Well, you
tons of
become a
friends
little bit more choosy, don't you?
and you become choosy. And I wasn't going to date anybody who was a client, because to me that was it was too hard in my business, and I just wasn't going to risk reputation. And so then there just really, it really had to be somebody outside of that industry, is the way I looked at it. And it just, and then you sort of go, then you do meet someone. So when I met my husband, we clicked right the first time we met, and it was at a barbecue, and it was at a barbecue that friends had. We clicked right away. And so then somebody had given me the book, The Rules.
Oh, yes, I remember that book.
Because when you get divorced, friends start going, oh, here's this book and here's that book.
Hey, we should bring that book. It's time for a resurgence of that book. The Rules
Well,
was
there is,
brilliant.
evidently, because my girlfriend told me recently that they have revamped it, and that there is a new one. And I thought, well, I mean, when I read that book, to me, the everything in there, and probably in the new one too, to a certain extent, the old rules are still good rules. And basically what the rules was saying is that don't be too accessible. So basically, he literally did ask me out on a Friday for a Friday. So the rules say, no, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, no, no.
You train the behavior. You train, as we've talked about before, you train the behavior you're going to get. So basically, of course, I had nothing on a Friday, because that was my day. I don't, Saturday
Yeah.
was my day. But even then, that's not good enough. 2 days or whatever. You need to ask me in advance. Thank you. And so you don't, if you like them, you don't shut them down. You don't say, you just go, oh, and I remember I said, oh, no, sorry, I'm unavailable. I don't say what I'm unavailable doing. No, I'm unavailable. What about Saturday? No, Saturday's not good for me either. But because then they're thinking, well, she's shutting me down, so she doesn't go out. So then you say, but I could catch up for a coffee on Sunday or for lunch on Sunday. And then that way you're just doing a daytime thing where you decide whether or not. And you'd have to do that sometimes a couple times before they get the idea, this is a busy person. And if I want to ask them out, I need to ask them in advance. And he always asked me in advance after that.
Good
Never.
training.
It was good train. It was good. And then the question always comes up, who pays, that kind of stuff in the rules. And my view is if that the person that asks you out is the person that pays.
Yeah,
So
I think I mean, that's kind of an old-fashioned way of looking at it. I don't think there's a problem
for the first day,
I don't think there's an issue, unless it's like if it's just at early stages of getting to know you. I don't think there's a problem in terms of, if you're both working or you're both similarly in a similar financial situation, there's nothing wrong with it. But then when it's a proper date.
if someone's asked me out on a date and then the bill comes and they go Dutch or whatever, say Dutch.
Oh, look, I think you need to have a conversation. If you've chosen a restaurant and it's a high-end restaurant and you've asked somebody out for a date and you've chosen everything, you've chosen the wine, then I'm sorry, you're paying.
If you've asked me out on a date, the first date, you're paying. And basically, I feel that's the way to go. If I ask you out, then I'm paying. That's my maybe it's old fashioned, but I'm not going. If you ask me out on a date, I don't care where we go, and and then all of a sudden the bill comes and you want to split it, I'll be going.
Yeah, no, I think if you're planning on going Dutch, you need to make it clear from the get-go. It's like,
but I think by the rules on the third date, the rule says basically on the third date from memory, then you should say, why don't you let me get this? And then that's a nice thing to do, or then have them over for dinner or whatever it is. And we also know what happens on the third date according to the rules. If you like them, but never on the first date or the second. So, I mean, that's according to the rules. And I swear to God, my mother, we've talked about her. She's
yeah.
She would literally, that would be the very similar thing, except for the third date thing, because that would be more. They just didn't do that back then. But
well, maybe they did. They just didn't talk about it.
Yeah, no, I really don't think they did. That's why they got married so young.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, and I think that finding there's this new show that's after The Voice in Australia, and it's called Bondi. It's all about that. I was watching it the other
I've
day.
watched the shorts. It looks terrible.
It's shocking, but it's the young kids who are dating and say, and the funny thing is, a lot of the same rules kind of apply. You know, you kind of watch that in the way that they're interacting with each other. And it's kind of like people get jealous, they cheat on their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And if they and the rule of the thumb of the rules, if they cheat on you now, they're going to cheat on you later.
Correct.
Like, excuse me, and it's kind of like they're just not that into you. If
Yeah.
they're cheating. That's the reality of it. And, and and as my mother would say, there's always another trolley car on its way.
Yeah.
And
Oh, goodness.
so those are so I look, my thing is always is that you really do need to check um check up on the person who you're dating. There's all kinds of ways. There's actually, which is so smart, a business. This girl, I wish I would have written down her name. Anyway, a business, she started a business checking out the profiles so basically when you meet someone, they
What's
give it to her and then
yeah.
she does a image reverse.
Reverse image search. But it's easy to do that anyway. You can do a reverse image search just using the Google tools. So,
Yeah, that's easy for you, Miss Technology Expert.
yeah. Look, well, maybe we need to do a little bit of a tutorial to protect everybody. But we're doing it in a work environment. We will be checking, if you're looking to hire somebody, you will be checking their credentials. You'll be checking to see if they've been in the news. You'll be checking to see if they've been caught up in any scandals. You'll be checking if, maybe you haven't seen them, so you don't know a photograph, you don't know what they look like. So that's kind of a little bit different to dating because people put up photos that are 10 years old or 20 years old or don't even resemble the person that they
No, do
are.
they really? I can't
No,
believe
yeah, Judith.
that.
I know it's terrible. Fancy posting a photo that's 10 years old and making out, you know,
Exactly right.
they say that they're 10 years younger than they actually are. Like maybe people do that in work. Well, we don't have, I mean, until you start putting in your superannuation forms and those sorts of things, knowing your age, maybe people are um, declining to state their age because of ageism.
And here's another thing. We were talking about that guy that you were saying that he didn't tell her that he was well off. Well, that's kind of hard today for people who are fairly well known or in senior positions. So someone sees you on a dating app and whatever they do, swiping left or right or contact you, whatever, they know everything about you. So they know your status and if you've got a good job or whatever, if you're in those. So it's actually very hard for people who have a higher profile to actually
Yeah,
then put themselves out there that way. Also older people, like, because really the 40s, 50s and 60s and on over might not be as in tune to the ways of checking things out
that's
if
so true.
they haven't been in that stream. So if they've been in roles where they haven't been high tech or anything like that, they may not know how to do all that
That's
stuff.
very true.
When I saw this person was having that kind of a business, I thought they'd have to be busy all the time
Yeah.
because even if you do know the tech, you may not have the time. And you might just say, can you just, this
And
guy's a
some people are just intimidated by the technology, and I can understand that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we talk about Headspace Havoc, and that this really does do my head in that so many women and men have
Oh,
been
look, men
scammed.
have been scammed. Some of the biggest financial scams have actually been men that have been scammed by women online that have professed undying love and have some dying relative or somebody needs an operation or just send me. I know of people that have been scammed in this way. And it's awful. It's awful. And
So
they've lost a lot of money.
tons. And I think the moral of the story here is that if you have a friend or family member or somebody you know who has gone through a divorce and they're now single, help them out. Like who doesn't know somebody else who isn't single? Or invite them to something, keep them active, keep them out there and off their computer so that they can get out there and do things. And because you don't have to have a partner to have a life.
That's very true.
Right? You can be active out there in groups and join things and do things. Where the loneliness sets in is when you're at home and there's no one around to talk to, and all you're doing is talking to, an AI person. You're going to start thinking this is real. So it's up to the people who are around you. Hopefully, everybody has somebody around them, a family member or something, to really look. And if you don't have people around you, also need to take responsibility for your own life and get out there as well, because there are groups, there are places to go, there are things to do. Even if you go and
there's lots of community things you can do from a sporting perspective or volunteering perspective where you get to meet interesting people. So, volunteer, join a club.
Absolutely. So we'd love to hear your stories. Let us know, what you think about this, and we'll keep this conversation going. But I want to get on a little bit of a more serious note here, because I read this morning and it does do my head in as well. And it was on Instagram, and it was a post put out by a lady by the name of Jessica Zoe Hickman. I have reached out to her because I thought, we should get her on. So we'll see, because this is something that deserves a whole episode. But she said here, I'm heartbroken and horrified. As someone who has experienced the pain of having my voice suppressed in the workplace, I hold freedom as a core value, freedom to express, to be heard, and to exist openly. In Afghanistan, the Taliban has imposed new rules that further strip women of their basic rights. Women are now forbidden from allowing their voices to be heard in public. They cannot sing, recite poetry, or even speak aloud in certain settings. God, I can't talk this morning. This silencing is not just about controlling voices. It's about erasing women from public life entirely.
Correct.
How can this happen, is what she said. And how can we bear witness to such oppressive and look away? Why are we doing more? Now, she says a lot more on there, so have a look at her thing. But I looked this up. And you know what really annoys me? This is not even in the mainstream media. There's a little bit on the UN site, I think it is, the human rights site, about it. And I'm thinking to myself, where are the leaders that are outraged by this happening? And it seems like women's rights are being diminished more and more. And we also there's also and I've talked about
other conversations are dominating the space.
It's ridiculous. People should be protesting this and putting pressure on our leaders to do something about this, because those women, if they can't do that in public, what can't they do behind closed doors?
I think there's a number of countries that have imposed similar things, and I don't think that's a new thing. And it's horrific. It really is. You can't be seen. You can't be heard. You can't have positions of power. You will just be my chattel.
Absolutely. The women's rights, I mean, you and I, and our mothers especially, our mothers were the ones that fought for real women's rights, and our grandmothers throughout the year. And everything seemed to be, I still think COVID just has caused so much chaos. But Rachel Wong, who we've talked about before, she put out a post saying the Flying Bats, a Sydney-based women's football team, has 5 male players identifying as women. They won the grand final on the weekend. I've read more stories on this. They virtually won 17 out of 17.
Which state are they in? Where are they?
In Sydney.
On Sydney.
And she's got women's sports is being obliterated, and people are too scared or too ideologically captured to point out that the emperor has no clothes. what an absolute disgrace. And then she goes on there. But she puts a ton of stuff out about stuff. And I look at these women and I think, you are so brave. And finally, people are speaking out, which needs to happen, because I've always said the silent majority keeps quiet for such a long time, while the loud minority and activists start screaming and yelling and trying to change things. And the thing is, this game that they had, people weren't allowed to have cameras.
Why?
Now, if this is so okay and there's no problem with it, then why would you allow spectators not to have cameras or take pictures? There were still some pictures of people, and the reality is that I'm a Ben Fordham, Ben Fordham, he's a 2GB. He talks about this stuff too and has people on. I saw something on there about an open league. It could be solved by having an open league everybody could play in.
Absolutely.
And choose to play, because I'm sorry, but I went through and Googled tons of stuff about the differences between men and women, biological differences.
Well, there's significant in terms of strength, especially if you've hormonally gone through as a gender, as a male.
I mean, I'm not even going to read it all because there's so much. And I don't think you need to be Einstein to know that men are stronger than women.
Look,
Biological
absolutely.
men are stronger than women. And that's why, because we don't see trans women who have become males in male sports.
Funny that.
Why is that? Because they're not strong enough to
compete
in the male sports. And Rachel, a lot of her things that she talks about is safe spaces and, people in, gyms and things like that.
Yeah.
Where little girls have been in the gym, and then there's been a biological male getting dressed in full front of a young girls and stuff. She talks about those kind of things. Now, people listening may not agree to what we're saying or what I'm saying. Tell us why.
It's so complex. It's so complex. We recently learnt, and I don't think it got a lot of publicity, or didn't get a lot because probably through COVID, and it's been quite quiet. But in the state of Victoria, you can change your gender on your birth certificate.
Yep, and
without having had any gender affirming surgery.
That's
so we know somebody who was born in the state of Victoria, was born a biological male, has had no gender reaffirming surgery, now identifies as female, and has had a birth certificate issued that has a brand new name and a brand new gender. And interestingly, in the state of Victoria, you can have any gender you like on your birth certificate, as long as it's not insulting or abusive or whatever. So I could be unicorn, but this particular person has got a gender as female. And there's no, not like on a blockchain where you can see all the changes and it's all documented. No. This person can now provide, and this person's a good actor, right? This person's a good actor. But imagine if you were a bad actor, what you could do with this. So this person's, a good human being and now identifies as female, but this person now can have a passport issued as a woman and can play, and can have all sorts of things.
So many applications that can go wrong. There is not enough scrutiny.
But imagine if you're a bad actor in the state of Victoria, you can change your gender every 365 or 366 days or whatever. So I could then put in another application 13 months later to actually have my gender changed again.
Now, here's how I see it. And again, I'm just saying to people, if we've got any of this wrong, don't come back to us and say, oh, you're a bunch of this and a bunch of that, without telling us why. Because this is about conversation. If we're wrong, tell us why and give us the facts. I don't want these arguments of, it's all wrong, you're wrong, you're this, that. You need to tell us why, because we're open. We're open. But from my point of view, like Krystyna and I we were brought up in a way where gender was our sex. And now gender has changed. Gender is how you identify. And sex is your sex. So your biological sex, that's how I see it, that your gender can be anything. You can be 100 of those ones that we've seen in the past. So why don't they then, if that's the case, if we accept the premise that gender is anything that you decide you identify as, but your biological sex is what you are born as. You are either a male or a female, or in very rare cases.
So let's have a life certificate. Stop calling it a birth certificate. Let's
Well,
have
even
a life
but,
certificate.
but,
And it's like Krystyna was born female. She's now decided, she's now, what, for whatever reason, I'm not going to go into the complexities, she now identifies as male, and she's changed her name to Fred Smith. But there's transparency about.
there should, the birth certificate, I think that I have no problem with the birth certificate staying the birth certificate because you're born a male or a female or
But
somewhere.
the thing is, people are rewriting
Yeah,
history now.
I know, but you on your birth certificate, you could have biological sex.
Yeah, but that's not something that's happening right now.
Yeah,
And
but that's fact.
I
But
guess we
that's
have to be
fact.
careful we don't conflate things, because, I'm all for people being their true selves and
Yeah.
having acceptance and being able to be themselves in the world. And then I think there's this other conversation which is tied in a little bit to what you were talking about, women being diminished, women's voices being diminished. I think what's unfortunately happening in this debate is we're conflating the fact that women are being diminished, because
Yes,
there's this other conversation that is a different conversation,
but it
seems to
ties
be
in.
taking the oxygen, and
But it ties
the issues
in.
are being conflated.
Yeah, but it ties in. It
Yeah.
ties in because the reality is we are all happy for people to be whatever they want to be. But
Yep.
as far as I'm concerned, by the time you're 21, be what you want to be. Don't muck around with kids. Their brains haven't formed yet to make those crucial decisions. But when they're 21, go for it. Be what you want to be. And really
That's a
20
complicated, that's
complicates another, but that's,
complicated.
I'm just saying how I believe. Fact is fact. You're born, so you have a be what you want to be, but your biological sex is your biological sex. So that is a fact, a scientific fact. But you can change your gender to be whatever it is that you want it to be. But when you go into that hospital and you're in a car accident and you go into that hospital, that doctor better know what biological sex you are, because there are differences that will make a difference when they're operating on you and doing things. So they do need to know those things.
Assuming you've had gender reaffirming surgery, a lot of
Yeah. But
people
even if you have, yeah, but even if you happen and they're looking at something, this is a female, but it's a male, and they haven't assessed you yet, they may make assumptions based on that aren't right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd love to have a doctor in here and actually ask,
Mm.
because this is just you and I going, we're just everyday people.
What do we know anyway,
What
right?
do
What do
we
we know
know?
anyway?
Right? This is just, as far as I'm concerned, I just look at it from a common sense point of view of that men, you're born biologically one way. If you want to change it later on, that's fine and dandy. It's your prerogative when you're older, do what you want to do. But the thing is, do I want my daughters in a environment where they're playing against biological male? I mean, you might go, oh, it's not fair. They've got rights too. But you don't always get everything you want in life. And if you've got an advantage because you've changed yourself and you've got an advantage because of that, why would you want to go in there and put other girls at risk, knowing that you are stronger, faster, taller?
Well, this was the whole boxing, Olympic boxing question, right?
Yeah.
This is all kind of part of that whole story.
Exactly. And I've read so many comments on everybody's things like Rachel's and other ones, and it's kind of like there's a lot of outrage. There's a lot of people, but a lot of the comments that other people will say, well, why don't women boycott and refuse to play with what, like in the case of these 5 playing that, why didn't they boycott and refuse to play? Well, because of fear, and they don't want people to come back at them, because as we always
Or
said,
they don't want to be seen as being judgmental. They don't want to be seen as being woke. They don't want to be seen as not being inclusive. Then
But
I want to be seen as being anti-diversity.
and that's not and the thing is, they're not. It doesn't mean that you're not inclusive because you don't want biological males who are now women identifying playing with biological women.
Yeah.
It just means, so you're not going, I don't think you should be a trans person. You do what you want to do,
Yeah.
but don't put people at risk if that is the case based on fact and biology. And that, and I think what we're seeing with the braveness of people like Rachel and others, there's another story out there too, that tickle versus giggle case.
Oh, that's been going for a little while. I've lost track of that story, but that was, landmark.
Yeah, exactly. So basically that's all about, we won't go into that now but look it up, people, because it's very interesting. And what we are seeing is that the majority of people are starting to be outraged. It's starting to affect their kids' lives personally, and they're starting to speak out. So, I think politicians need to start listening to that stuff and look at what's fair. And to me, the fairest thing is an open category for sports.
Absolutely.
And have gender neutral,
or gender diverse, gender diverse. If you identify as whatever.
But what do you do in a gym? What do you do in a gym situation? That's
the way a lot of public places have handled that is that they have separate cubicles, and there's no gender attached to a cubicle. There's a change room or a change cubicle, and there are toilets that all have doors. There's no open urinals. Everything's behind a closed door, and you go and knock yourself out. Go and get changed in that room. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are. Yep. Go into that toilet. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are.
That's what they need to do from now. Have those.
So stop. It's all these problems are solvable.
That's all. And really have that open category, because then people can choose whether or not they want to be in it or not. Because what I've always said is why do the men want to choose to go to the women's sports anyway? They're going to get paid less.
I've got to say, having been born a woman and lived a woman and gone through all the hormonal stuff that women go through, why would you, and having all the things to fight against and all the career challenges and being a strong, opinionated human being, why would you choose to be a woman?
But we need safe spaces. It needs to be fair. We've been talking about this for years, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what the heck has gone on over the last because this has really just come out in the last probably 3 to 4 years during COVID. So during that whole pandemic point, like really high into the media. So anyway, I like we said, we don't have all the answers. This is just what our little, sort of views are.
A little rant for the fortnight.
A little rant. If you've got different views, well, this is what this is about. We want to hear them. Let us know. And please, again, like and subscribe. Let us know if we're on the right track. Tell your friends, share it to your socials, and let's get the word out there. But we'll definitely bring some people in who are more knowledgeable. We'll see if we can get
there's plenty of people more knowledgeable than us, let me tell you.
Absolutely. We love to hear different views, and educate us. Let us, if we're wrong, educate us. Don't just tell us we're wrong, educate us. Thanks, Krystyna. It was great.
Thanks, Judith.
Great day.
Bye. For more information about Every Step and our guests, head to everysteppodcast.com. To be notified of new podcasts, please subscribe via your favourite listening platform. And of course, follow us on social media and direct message us to share your ideas about guests or topics.